Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door. The HarperCollins Library Team, aka Library Love Fest, is here with another episode with a really wonderful author. We will have two authors. We're going to start with Danielle Trussoni, and then we will follow up with Alexandra Chang. So, um, Danielle Trussoni, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to be part of our series.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So your book, The Ancestor, just went on sale April 7th. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's 1 week in the world.
It's got to be a cool feeling.
It's a great feeling. Obviously it's been a strange publication experience. And I'm sure everyone out there who's part of this right now is having a strange experience too. So it's been a little bit wild and weird, but yes, it's still exhilarating and exciting because I'm getting, instead of the events where I'm seeing people in person, I'm getting a lot of contact from readers online. So I'm just sort of trying to take that in and make it all feel like a normal publication experience.
Yeah, it's the new, unfortunately, the new abnormal. But it's a learning experience too for all of us in different ways that we can reach librarians and readers. And having you here to talk about your book is one way to do that, and it's really exciting. We were all together at the ALA Midwinter Conference in Philadelphia, and boy, you had so many people there. So happy to meet you and talk to you about the book.
Yeah, what's been amazing is that a lot of those people have stayed in touch with me on Twitter. So I made some new friends, and we're continuing to have conversations about books and what everybody's reading. I've been giving book recommendations because I think, as you know, I write a column for the New York Times Book Review called Dark Matters, which is everything Gothic, horror, dark suspense, historical fantasy with horror elements. And so I've had a number of librarians write to me and just say, what are you reading? And that's been really fun and cool for me to be able to interact that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, speaking of books that everybody should be reading, The Ancestor should be at the top of everyone's list. It's gotten such pages of reviews, raves, of course. The New York Times says ingenious and entertaining, chilling and inventive and addictive book. You've got raves from PW and Kirkus and Library Journal. Booklist says the intermingling of science, legend, and genealogy make for a truly captivating tale of literary horror, which I thought really encapsulated what the book is about. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, and then we can talk a little bit about your behind the book piece, which I love, and then we'll do a little you'll do a little reading for us.
Sure. So the book came about, just a very quick summary of what it's about. It's on the short version is that it's about a woman who discovers that she has ancestors that she did not know she had, and she actually has inherited an estate in Italy. And she goes, and of course, as this is a Gothic novel, nothing turns out quite as happy and rosy as she would have wished it to be. So that's just the short version. I started this novel after I myself took a DNA test. It was a genealogy, just a 23andMe genealogy box test. And I grew up as an Italian American, a big extended Italian American family. And my test said that I was 1.7% Italian. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, wait, what did all this mean? This cultural identity, like me being Italian. And so I had to reassess what all that was about. And so the question I posed to myself when I started this book was, what would be the wildest thing that could happen when someone takes one of these tests? Let's see what happens. And I just went with it.
Yeah, I love some of the lines. If they go to the Edelweiss and they can find your behind the book piece, Chris, I don't know if you can show, because you took some photographs too. of the area that you're writing of and where you're coming from. And I love this. I love that that you say that your character, as Alberta discovers everything that she believed about herself and her species, can be turned on its head with one test.
Yeah.
And just talking about the pitfalls, the windfalls and the pitfalls of genetic inheritance. And those photographs are, can you talk about that for 1 second?
Yeah, so the first photo that you saw of that castle, I slept there.
Chris, can you go back to that one?
I actually slept at this castle, and I wanted to experience what my character would feel. And so this is the Aosta Valley, which is way up in the Alps, like the very northernmost part of Italy, and the least populous as well. And so that's the castle. And then if you go down to the next picture, that's Mont Blanc. And a different hotel was right there. That's from my balcony.
Oh, God.
So the novel is actually set essentially between those two mountains. See those two mountains that come together like this? Like the imaginary village that I created is right there. So all of this went into the creation of the setting. And, you know, of course, then I went and visited a lot of, it was very difficult, but I visited a lot of restaurants and had to eat a lot of Italian food and figure out what my characters would be eating and drinking. And yeah, so I basically just immersing myself in that culture so that I could bring it to the book.
Yeah. Chris, can you scroll down to the other photographs? Can you talk about that for a second?
That's a trophy room. The House of Savoy was an old aristocratic family in the Piedmont. And in the Ancestor, I have their lineage cross with my imaginary family in the 11th century. So I went, of course, to all of the places where this House of Savoy had lived. And this was one of their trophy rooms. These are chamois goats and or mountain goats. And this trophy room had over 1,000 of those horns, those mountings in it.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. And then there's the cheese.
Oh, yes, of course. And so that was my breakfast. Oh. Okay, so that tower is the inspiration for one of the towers in the book. And then the cheese, this is something they serve for breakfast.
Beautiful.
Which, it was amazing. Sheep cheese, local Italian sheep cheese. And of course, I ate all of that. And, you know, they don't serve the wine for breakfast, but some of my characters do drink wine for breakfast. That's just how they do it in the castle.
Doesn't make you a bad person. Well, I love this. I love the piece. I'm not even going to ruin it. I highlighted so many different lines from your behind the book piece because they're so beautiful, and just talking about, you know, genetic testing and who you think you are. And then in the larger picture, we're all just one sort of, species, but it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the takeaway, I guess. You know, the larger, if someone has asked me recently, well, what's the larger message of your book? And, yes, it's an adventure story. And yes, there's a lot of suspense and it does have Gothic horror elements. But the big takeaway for me in writing this was that we are one species, and our, what we think we are these places, these tribes that we think we belong to. When you take a step back and look at us over, an evolutionary span, we are really, unique as Homo sapiens, and we're all together in this. So that's really sort of the theme of the book.
Yeah.
And there's a library in the book, which I would love to read a passage from the book about the library, if you don't mind.
Well, we would love that.
Okay, let me find it.
Okay.
I had to put my reading glasses on.
Okay. How are we doing on?
We had a comment that says wine for breakfast. That's how we roll during this pandemic because who knows what time it is.
Well, it doesn't. It looks like I only have I only have 3 minutes. Is that true?
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay, because the passage might take about 5 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So this is the main character. Her name is Bert Monty. It's short for Alberta, and she's going to a library to learn more about her family history. And Basil is the librarian, and I'm just going to start with him. Basil was at a desk near a window, writing in a thick ledger. It had begun to snow, and a cyclone of white swirled against the window, obscuring the mountains. There was a pot of ink at Basil's side and a black fountain pen in his hand. He appeared to be cataloging books. There were stacks and stacks of them on the table, 50 at least. A history of the Alps, collections of political essays, a biography of Mary Shelley, and a novel by Anne Radcliffe. As I approached, he put down his pen, gave me a quick wave, and gestured for me to join him. I dropped into a hard wooden chair. The room was cool, drafts of air slipping through the windows. I shivered and wished I had worn the mink coat, which I had left hanging in my rooms. So she found a mink coat just lying around the castle, and she was wearing it earlier. You must have lots of time to read, I said, glancing at a biography of Mary Shelley. Less than you would imagine, Basil replied. These books are like living creatures to me. Caring for them takes a great deal of time. I repair damaged spines, watch for mold and worms, and generally keep the collection safe from the all too inevitable ravages of time. No one ever thinks that books need tenderness, but they do, quite a lot in fact. He stood and walked beyond a row of shelves into a shadowy alcove, returning with a box. But the most time-consuming aspect of my work, the one that has been the focus for the better part of a decade, has been archiving the Montebianco family's records. I'll just stop there. So he's an archivist, and he has spent years and years and years translating and archiving the Montebianco family history because it's immense. They're a 1,000-year-old family, and he was brought in to do all of that. So my main character gets very involved with his work in the library.
That's fantastic. That's really wonderful. And just one more reason to crack open this book if you haven't already. Do we have other questions, comments? Love, lots of love.
Lots of love. They, like you said about having lots of good book recommendations. Someone wants to know what you're most looking forward to reading this summer.
What I'm looking forward to this summer. Let me see, I have a stack of books that I'm going to be reviewing. One, but that's coming out now. Let me look over here. I have a big stack. Couple of things that I've got on my pile here. One of them, it's coming out in April, and I'm doing an event with her tonight. If you want to come and join me, it's called Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. You know, that's really good. Another one is this book that I love. It's coming out though, I think in June. It was moved briefly to July, and now I think it's coming back out in the original time. And that's called Catherine House by
We're big fans of Catherine House.
Yeah, that's great. Another one that I really like that's coming out this year is The Year of the Witching. And that's something I'm reading now, which I'm really enjoying, by Alexis Henderson.
Awesome. A lot of people saying they're reading Ancestor for their book club. They love the photos, and the antlers are great.
Yeah, so if anyone would like me to visit their book club, I love doing that. I have a Zoom account, and I just Zoom right in. And I come in and I just say hi and answer questions and then go back out. So if you want, just contact me directly and I'll come.
Awesome.
That is lovely. So how are people contacting you directly?
It's usually through one of my social media channels, either Twitter or Facebook, but the best way is just directly by email through my website.
Okay.
My address is Danielle@danielletrussoni.com. And
Danielle,
I get it directly and I make sure that I answer it.
that is lovely. Thank you so much. That's music to everyone's ears. So please, librarians, if you want to have a virtual author visit by Danielle Trussoni to talk about her new book, The Ancestor, go to her website and you will find her there. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That is greatly appreciated. And we so love you're taking the time to talk with everyone today and share some of your book. And it's lovely to see you. Stay safe, be well, and yeah, much luck to you with this wonderful book.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Danielle.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, she's lovely.
Yes.
She is lovely. And man, what
being
a,
read to.
huh?
I love being read to.
I think from now on, when authors read to us, We should do a quick costume change and put on onesies.
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah, hot cocoa,
Yes.
maybe spiked hot cocoa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Sounds
God.
good to
I know
me.
it is the best feeling in the world, isn't it? It just brings you right back. But that's lovely. Oh, those pictures are so cool. All right. So now we have another author.
We do, and so Alexandra Chang, and she's in the waiting room, so we can bring her in right now if we're ready. Want to go?
We're ready.
Great. All right, Alexandra. Haley,
Hi.
Hello. Uh-oh,
how
can we
are
hear her?
you? Let's see. Let's make sure you're.
Oh, can you hear
There
me?
we go.
Yes,
Yeah, loud and
can.
clear. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Not bad at all. We're live on Facebook. People are watching, been waiting, and they're excited to hear from you.
Wonderful. I'm
Yeah,
excited to be
excellent.
here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time to, just talk to librarians about your book. Days of Distraction. How exciting. Beautiful jacket, by the way. Do you love it?
Yes, I do. It was a bit of a process to get to, but ultimately, like, this cover is so striking and I've really fallen in love with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is striking. It's beautiful. So your book, it's a debut. It went on sale March 31st. How are you doing? I mean, this has got to be some heady time for you with this book and this
Yeah.
strange time in the world.
I'm doing okay. I think at first, sort of in the weeks leading up to publication, the uncertainty of like whether or not all of my events would be canceled was sort of strange to go through. And then ultimately, and rightly so, all of the events were canceled. So now doing these kinds of things from home, like virtual events and seeing the community sort of come together to support one another has been really heartening. So I feel like that's one silver lining of this situation. It is strange to publish a debut, I think, during a pandemic, because there's so much confusion around publishing a book for the first time for an author.
Mhm.
And then the added confusion and anxiety of living through this particular moment is also added on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a unique experience to publish a book anyway for an author, but to publish it under these circumstances, and it makes everything, you just sort of, I don't know, you re-examine the entire big picture, but this is something that, you've been living with for a long time, this book of yours. Now here it is. And that's why we're so thrilled to have you on to share your story with librarians. And so, yeah, I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, you've gotten a PW starred review, book list. Lainey, you've got the book list starred review up. We want to read that one?
I do. I have got a lovely starred review from Booklist, and I have this little short quote. So she explored the struggle to be free in an oppressive society with incredible insight and clear, captivating prose that set her apart as a striking new voice in literature, which is just a stunning quote. So congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, that Booklist review was my very first review. So it felt really special when I first saw that come in. And it was really nice. Nice to see.
Beautiful. So I like what we're calling it, an offbeat coming of adulthood tale, and I love that, because she is this woman at the heart of the story is trying to sort of like, I guess, break free and find her own way in her life, in her situation with her work and her boyfriend, and just the bigger picture like we're talking about. So do you want to talk a little bit about the book and, just, let us, whatever you want to say, whatever you want people to know.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So yeah, the offbeat coming of adulthood tale, that's like a pretty good way to summarize it on like in a quick way. So it's told from the perspective of a young Chinese American woman in her mid-20s who at the opening is working as a technology journalist in San Francisco, and it follows about a year and a half in her life as she, moves across the country with her partner and ultimately, leaves behind everything she knows, like her career, her family, and starts this new life in upstate New York. And in that process, so yeah, there's the cover.
Wow.
In that process, she sort of struggles to find a sense of self. So on a broader level, it is also about the precarity of young adulthood and work and family, and ultimately the challenges of figuring out a sense of self when, when other people's perceptions are limiting and harmful, and when these like larger and unwieldy forces like racism, sexism, capitalism infect this particular woman's day-to-day life and her relationships. It's also worth noting that this story is told in a series of vignettes. So it is structured in a sort of like fragmented way. And there are also elements of Asian American history that sort of find their way into the narrative, especially around the history of interracial relationships between Asians and whites in this country. So yeah, that's like an overview of the book. And then I thought maybe I would read just like the first two fragments or of the novel.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Great.
Thank you.
People think I'm smaller than I am. For example, my feet. In fact, I wear size 8.5 or 9. According to Google, these are the most common sizes for American women. Average is good, I reason. It means that wherever I end up in this country, it will be easy to find someone whose shoes I can borrow. Everything in our house smells of mildew, even with the dehumidifier running. In the morning, while Jay still sleeps, I take out the full tank of water collected from the overnight air and dump it in our front yard, a place full of sand and desert plants. The fog hangs low over the street of families and retirees. To the east, Sutro Tower jets through the clouds. If I walked west to the end of the block, then up the long, zigzagging stairs to the top of Grandview Park, and if not for this early fog, I'd be able to see all of the sunset with its rows of pastel houses, and past that, the vast green of Golden Gate Park, where in the northwest section, the all-female herd of bison roam their paddock. I've come to cherish this ritual in front of our small yellow house, watching the water pool dark, then sink into the ground. I know where I am and what I am doing. But now we are preparing to leave this all behind. So that's the just like the opening of the novel, just to give a taste of the tone of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so it's very poignant and very tender, because you know she's leaving what she knows behind.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sentence in the description here where it says, "What does it mean to exist in a society that does not notice or understand you?" And I think that's what's happening to her, and it feels to me like she's just leaving the safety of what she sort of knows.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of this book I drew from my own life during that time period of my life in my mid-20s, when I was trying to, and I think this is something that, probably a lot of people who have gone through their mid-20s and their late 20s too, I was trying to figure out what I was doing with myself, and every decision felt really weighted. And for the narrator, these decisions of, whether or not to follow her boyfriend across the country, then like what to do with herself once she's in this new environment, feel very weighted to her as, you know, a person in her 20s. But then there are all these other elements that I wanted to incorporate into the book that I hadn't quite seen done so much in literature yet. And that was, you know, the particular experience of being a young Asian woman who in her day-to-day life is existing in this in these systems and structures that don't tend to recognize or see her lived experiences. So
Yeah.
for example, like in the workplace where we see her in much of the first part of the book, she works as a tech journalist, and this is, you know, tech is a predominantly white, predominantly male industry. And in her own office space, she struggles to be recognized for the work that she does. This book isn't really so much about, you know, big plot and plot-driven story. And oftentimes I do see, like in other books, like race and racism sort of functioning as this, maybe in like big plot moves, where it's a little bit easier to recognize, like, you know, that was a racist moment in in a storyline, and you can't deny that, you know, that happened. But I think for me, like for much of my life, racism is more of a day-to-day experience, and oftentimes a bit harder to pin down and recognize, and therefore also difficult to address, because it's failed in these systems. So I wanted this book to show that experience, that lived experience, and dramatize that a bit more on the page. And I very much had in mind, you know, readers who, at least my ideal reader in my mind is, you know, someone who is like myself, and who I would hope would be able to read this and find a sense of kinship.
Right. And you'd like to think that the readership would also include those who have an open mind and are that it's a teachable thing too, you know, and what you're saying about they're not being it's not so plot driven, so it's got to be harder in a way, you know, to write it, I would think, because it's not nuanced, but it's different. Yeah, it's just what you're saying is different.
Yeah, I mean, I think in writing this, like with like my ideal reader in mind, it wasn't that I'm like it's not that I'm closed off to other readers who
No,
I
no,
would
no.
also hope, yeah, I would hope that, you know, anyone could approach this book and be able to get something out of it and experience some level of not necessarily entertainment, but maybe the sort of joy and that we experience when we read. But yeah, I do think in writing a book that doesn't have any necessarily like major plot moves, I think like the biggest thing that happens in this book is a cross-country road trip and the character getting a dog and a cat. That's like probably her biggest plot move in the book. But
When you're young, you know, those little things seem so big in the long
right.
run. But like you were saying, you know, it's those little decisions that feel so heavy, but it really does take up a lot of your time.
Yeah. And I do think like I wanted to show how all of these smaller moments add up to a life, and how in fiction, you know, you can on the page dramatize a life in this way where small moments take on larger meaning.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for writing it, first of all, and for coming today and sharing this. I mean, this is extraordinary, really. No wonder you've gotten the raves that you have, the starred reviews that you have, and the love that this book has received is wonderful, and it's just the beginning. It's only been on sale a short time.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting process, even though, a lot of it has taken place within my own home and like through these virtual events. It's been really nice to be able to hear from readers of this book and be able to like engage with people who love books and who are interested in these kinds of stories. And actually, what's been really nice too is hearing from some readers who have made connections between the book and the current moment of, the rise of, unfortunately,
Yeah.
rise of anti-Asian racism. And I don't mean to say that it's nice to hear that like my book is resonating because of this rise of racism, but I do think that it has been really meaningful to me to hear from readers who have said that reading my book in this time has felt comforting in some way. So in that way, at least, it is exciting to know that, and it feels good to know that my book is out there and can, I hope, bring moments of comfort and solace to people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's and that's lovely that people are sharing that with you, and it is. I mean, it's that this book is finding its audience on many different levels, but as you say, that people can recognize, they're recognizing, they're seeing, they're hearing themselves, some of their experiences, and unfortunately, what's happening today more than ever, this is just a lovely thing that you can that you have this book, that we have this book that we can share with readers and say, you're not alone, and here you are.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and thank you so much for having me on this and giving me the space and the time to be able to talk about my book to more people.
sure, we're thrilled. We really are. It's an honor to have you on, and we congratulate you on this, and thank you for writing it. And librarians are watching. They will continue to share, and more eyes will be on this and hear what you had to say. And it's an honor to work on books like this, and it's just absolutely wonderful to meet you, and so glad that you could take the time to share your story with everyone.
Thank you so much.
Chris, Laney, do we have any?
So lots of good comments. They saw the cover and they have the galley already. They're so excited for it. Lots of comments about the cover. Also, how lovely your reading voice is.
Thank you.
But and like great for book clubs. One question: who and what do you like to read? But I think maybe in a broader, like any inspiration or authors you've brought into your reading.
Yeah, for this book, I drew a lot of inspiration from authors who are also writing in this sort of fragmented form, and that includes Valeria Luiselli, who in several of her novels writes in this structure, but particularly Faces in the Crowd was meaningful to me. Mary Robeson's Why Did I Ever, Annalise Chen's So Many Olympic Exertions, and Renata Adler's Pitch Dark. Those were books that were really helpful in my own writing process. And then, of course, so many Asian American authors' works have been really influential on my own. People like Ian Lee, Chang Rae Lee, Julie Otsuka, and a lot of new writers who I'm really excited about who are publishing right now too. A lot of Asian American writers who have their first novels or first books out, like I'm like, I feel like I'm doing sort of like a roll call right now. But C. Pam Jong's How Much of These Hills is Gold, and Mung Jin's Little Gods.
Chris
And
loves that book.
I
oh
love that
yeah,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed her. She's brilliant.
Hmm.
The
And
novel is as well. But
that book is so wonderful.
it really is. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's been really exciting to see like the sort of debut authors who are also coming out at this time. I noticed that you interviewed Megan Giddings for Lakewood, and that was another novel that I really loved.
Yeah, we were thrilled to have her on, and she's just lovely. And again, another great, opportunity for us to bring her to librarians, and she was great.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
to echo what you said earlier, we had a comment from Elaine who, shares in the experience that you had talked about, and this how poignant this is with the increased xenophobia against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So, again, it's immediately striking home for a lot of people. So it's really very much appreciated.
That's so nice to hear.
yeah. Well, I think that's pretty good, huh? We've gotten some nice comments and some good questions, and a great reading list from you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, lots of books. Lots of books to add to everyone's
Yeah.
reading lists.
Yeah. But at the top of that list is Days of Distraction, which is out now, and just a beautiful, beautiful book. So thank you again, and you take good care, and be well, everyone out there. We'll be back again on Thursday with another edition of Door to Door. And until then, take good care. We'll see you again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Andrea, take care.